Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Madera City Council. Tonight is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. It is now 6 p.m. The Madera City Council meetings are open to the public. This meeting will also be available for public viewing and participation through Zoom. Members of the public may also observe the live stream meeting on the city's website at www.madera.gov/live. Members of the public may comment on agenda items at the meeting or remotely through an electronic meeting via phone by dialing 669-900-6833. Enter ID 813-7791, 4237 hashtag. Comments will also be accepted via email at citycouncilpubliccomment@madera.gov or by regular mail at 205 West 4th Street, Madera, California, 93637. We would hereby call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Alicia, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Garcia?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos?
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Here.
Councilmember Montes?
Here.
Councilmember Evans?
Here.
Councilmember Mejia?
Here.
And Councilmember Villegas?
Here. Thank you, Alicia. Would you all please rise for the invocation led tonight by Fred Thurman of the New Life Assembly?
Thank you all. Heavenly Father, we thank you as we gather here tonight. We ask that your presence would be with us. We thank you, Father, for your wisdom and your understanding, and we pray for the blessing and prosperity of our city. And we give you praise for safety that you've given us here and continued safety. Lord, we give you the glory and the honor. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led tonight by Councilmember Villegas.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, sir. Pastor. We will now move on to approval of the agenda. I will ask my colleagues if they have any changes or additions to the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion to approve the agenda by Councilmember Montes, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. There are no presentations tonight. We will not move on to public comment. The first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked, but are not required, to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold a comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is open. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not do public comment at this time. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak under public comment? And remember that there's a 3-minute timer on the monitor.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Pam Graywall. I'm here to thank everyone that we hosted the first time in the history, Little League state tournament at the park. And it was such a great comments that came through from Northern California. Nothing but positive regarding the city, the hotels that we have, the restaurants and the fields, the way they look. Not one criticism or negative comment was we heard or said by our guests. I'm here to just tell the city, thank you so much for supporting this historical event that happened 70 years of a Little League here. I don't know when it's going to happen again. So I really want to thank you. And also I have 2 plaques that I want to present. One to the Parks and Recreation. The second one is to Public Works. This one is for Joe. Joe, can you come up, please? And the Public Works, also, I'm going to give it to Joe so he can give that to them. Thank you. We had a drone service there. Actually, I hired, and that's gonna be actually releasing it today. So you guys will be the first one to hear, to see it. So I would like to get that played today in front of all of you guys, and that's gonna represent our city and our leagues and all the job that we have done. So thank you, everyone, and I appreciate you all.
Nice.
That is it, and thank you so much.
That's awesome.
You did brought everyone that came.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you. We will now move on to public. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak under public comment? We will now move on. We will close public comment and move on to public hearings. There are none tonight. We will. We will move on to our consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item be removed from the consent calendar and it will be considered separately. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll close public comment on that and bring it back to my colleagues for a motion and or discussion.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Motion to approve the consent calendar by Councilmember Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Ayes have it. Item C is the workshop on homelessness regarding the Governor Newsom executive order. Chief?
Well, thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, members of the public. Gino Chermani, Chief of Police. I'm here today to kind of discuss some of the issues related to homelessness, some of the most recent legislation and court hearings that have come out and court findings and some direction to how cities are handling it and how our city plans on moving forward. So I kind of wanted to start with a little bit of a background and just a general understanding of what does it look like with homelessness in the city of Madera. In 2023 was our last point in time count. Point in time count is conducted through CAPMC, that's Community Action Partnership Madera County, with a whole host of volunteers that goes out and actually does a hand count for every individual who is homeless and either sheltered or unsheltered. And when you see the difference of sheltered and unsheltered, sheltered would mean they're in some type of emergency housing, but they're not in any permanent housing. So with the numbers in 2023, as of January, we had a total of 541 homeless individuals within the city of Madera. Now, could that number have changed in 2024? Yes, but they changed just this year. They no longer annually counted, but they biannually counted twice a year, every other year. I apologize. So our next point in time count won't be until 2025, this next January. So want to get an idea, so we have a total of over 500 individuals. I would like to kind of let you know where we were going from 2022 coming out of COVID, and where was the increase or decrease as it related to the city of Madera. And the change from 22 to 23, we had an increase of 132 unsheltered and 186 sheltered, with a total of 318. So we over doubled our homeless population within our city. So we have a serious problem in our city, that we have a lot of individuals that need help and need our assistance. And I just kind of wanted to go back to that one on the sheltered side. You may ask, how did the sheltered increase so much? Some of the issues from 2022 were COVID restrictions at the Madera Rescue Mission. They couldn't have as many beds or as many people in individual rooms together. So that is another piece to the increase of our shelter. We had more shelter available. Now, there's been a lot of questions in the community that I've received, whether by phone or by email, and it's what is going on with some of the most recent court cases and how does it affect us? So I thought I would go back to the 2018 case of Martin versus Boise and how that had an effect and a change on how the enforcement of local camping ordinances occurred within cities. In 2018, in the Martin versus Boise case, the Court of Appeals of the Ninth Circuit, which is the Court of Appeals that handles all of California, held that the Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment clause barred cities from actually enforcing public camping ordinances whenever the homeless people increase or exceeded the number of practical available beds. And this caused major issues because not every city has shelter available or the resources available to do it. So in some cities, it absolutely demolished their policy, as in they couldn't enforce it at all. In other cities, they didn't have the room available in their shelters, so they couldn't enforce the orders. But it had causation for people like us who are enforcing our local ordinance to have a strong partnership with our rescue mission. That way we could call nightly and ask what their bed and staffing was available, and if it was something that we would be able to enforce that policy during that enforcement day. We have a great relationship with Jesse Chavez right now. And just to let you know, throughout this entire ordinance, we had never found a day that if we were in enforcement action, that they were at max effort. So this did not slow down the city of Madera and our enforcement of those efforts. The most recent case law that had effect was the one that came out of the Supreme Court, and that was on June 28th. That was City of Grants Pass versus Johnson. And that was where the United States Supreme Court ruled that the City of Grants Pass did not violate the Constitution's prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment when enforcing their camping ordinance against homeless individuals. And it basically in turn overturned the Martin versus Boise, since the Supreme Court is the law of the land. So they overturned that 2018. And with that, the governor on July 25th came out with an executive order on how he wanted the state and anybody under his authority to rule and set policy in regards to no camping ordinances, but then also asked the cities and local jurisdictions to follow suit. With that, he offered up 5 pieces that were attached to his executive order that in the policies, he wanted to make sure that local jurisdictions were also following. And I thought I would kind of share that one. The first one was, whenever feasible, have site assessments. This is something that the City of Madera often does. This is what our code enforcement and our community response team does. They will go out, survey the sites. One of the things is we got to make sure, is it something that's unsafe for the public and something that needs to immediately take action? Or is this just a public nuisance? And so we need to determine what is the imminent, if there is an imminent threat to life, health, or safety or infrastructure. Then the second piece to it was, if there was exigent circumstances exist, provide as much advance notice as possible under the circumstances. The third one was if no exigent circumstances exist, posting a notice to vacate the site at least 48 hours prior to initiating removal. Now, Grants Pass only offered up 24 hours. That was the mandate that came out of Grants Pass. Governor Newsom requested that the policies be 48 hours. The city of Madera, actually, we do 72-hour postings, and we kind of follow what is the eviction notice. A common eviction notice is 72 hours. Has there been times when we have done less than? Yes, we have found some very uninhabitable structures that needed to come down immediately and were public safety hazards, but that also follows the first and second piece to Governor Newsom's policy. The fourth piece to it was he wanted to contact outreach specialists and make sure that there's services being provided. And the last one just was related to the collection of evidence and labeling and storage and making sure it's a minimum of 60 days. The city of Madera and the Madera Police Department does have those rules in effect. We do have a 60-day storage policy at minimum. If we do not know the occupants, we have a 90-day. That's a policy on holding of evidence. Now, after that order came out, people were wondering, are we going to start our enforcement? Was there going to be any major changes to our enforcement? So I wanted to talk about what our current enforcement looks like. In the last 8 months, we've had posted and removed over 159 encampments. This is not single encampments. So at times they could be 6 to 8 individuals at one encampment. So it's a lot larger than just the 159. I apologize if I said 158, 159 encampments. I'd like to talk about the general areas of where a lot of these encampments are located. 60% of them are along our Fresno River, which I think a lot of us who drive that river or some of us that reside nearby that river kind of understand that. But even when we start looking at those numbers, I didn't dig down in the exact numbers, but that number would be much higher when you go from the Meadows location, which is just west of Tozier, to the east side of Tozier. So there's kind of a half-mile area that is a really hotbed where there's not a lot of homes or locations to get down into that riverbed. They're looking for places where people are not and not a common area for cars and things to be driving by. The second area is along Union Pacific Railroad, and that runs along the heart of our city, right down the middle of the city, and there's a lot of areas that back up to industrial that are out of the way, can't really be seen by the roadway, so it gives them an area to be able to hide and be able to set up their encampments until someone actually complains or it's noticed. This is a picture along the Fresno River that's there. Now, with our current enforcement, we do have a municipal code that is enforceable. It's a municipal code section 4-14.02, and that's our illegal camping ordinance. And that ordinance says you cannot camp within the city limits on both public or private property. It does give relief to a personal property residence if someone wants to maybe do a single night with their child in their backyard. As long as there is permission, they are allowed to do that. But this kind of does talk to, because we do have some major issues on private property that code enforcement is currently dealing with. You may ask, why do we enforce this illegal camping ordinance? And I kind of want to talk about some of the issues we're dealing with, specifically in the river with crime and criminality associated to it. We've had major incidents just a few years ago. We had a loss of life where a homeless person had multiple canines that were off leash and actually mauled and attacked an individual who later died. We have had assaults, major assaults. We've had drug dealings. We've had purchasing of guns down in the riverbed. We've had accosting of females, which is very recent and happening on the west side. I do want to talk a little bit about that case because we do have him detained as of this afternoon. So we have a lot of positive progress. I'm not coming out with the name or details. The detectives are actually still in their interview and interrogation phase with him because we did have 3 cases. So we're trying to understand if he's associated with the other previous two, but those two occurred out in the county. This one actually occurred in the city, and this is the one we for sure have solved. And I'll probably be releasing more tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we'll probably start to go more media with that, but we got to kind of close out that case beforehand. But not just crime in the sense of crimes against people. We've also had major danger incidents occur in the river bottom. We do have our fire personnel, CAL FIRE, out of City of Madera. I don't know of a department that works harder in that river bottom outside of the cleanup efforts, because just in the months of April and May, we had 38 fires in a 2-month period down there. So the safety to our community, the safety to the neighboring residents is huge. And that's some of the main reasons why we do the enforcement efforts that we do. This is a picture I just wanted to, in case you didn't know what it looked like when it happens along the Union Pacific Railroad. The top right one is the great work by the Safe and Clean team in our Public Works Department. They do a solid job on cleanups, but you could just see the trash that accumulates with these encampments. You know, our city manager, Arnaldo Rodriguez, has played a major role in the cleanup efforts of the river. And I just kind of want to praise him and say thank you to him for taking the lead on that and bringing everybody together. That this year we had the largest river cleanup the city has ever undertaken. It spanned from Tozier Bridge, just east of Tozier Bridge, to the west of Catlin Drive on our far west side where the homes end. It was a team effort between Parks Department, Public Works, our Safe and Clean team, Madera Irrigation District, and CAL FIRE, who brought dozers in. They spent 2 weeks. Some of it went a little bit beyond, depending on the CAL FIRE dozer team capability of being there. But just the work that they did, and my picture's gone. I apologize. I had a picture that I was proud of showing the river bottom, but just the work that they did. Now, how does that deal with, or how's that a positive for homelessness and enforcement? Well, one of the biggest issues during COVID is they began to find ways to hide all of their encampments inside the foliage and everything that was growing. And it was growing out of control to where we didn't even know where people were staying. It wasn't safe when people would get into the weeds. But then, as you know, we lost 2 homes as a result of fires that were started in the river bottom that actually reached the top of the embankments and then reached 2 homes on our west side. And so fire is a major issue in our town. And it's something that we actually had to adjust our police response for. Before, people who arrived to fires, if it was one in the river bottom, was just fire. They would go and put it out. But it was such a problem that we have now assigned an officer to be dispatched with every single fire call, and we've solved quite a few arsons. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but we have definitely increased our arson arrests, and I would say with my partners that we've also reduced that since May when we were having the uptick. I'd be remiss if we start talking about issues within our community and homelessness if we weren't talking about the collaborative efforts that were going on with numerous nonprofits and other agencies. And I think this is extremely important because we're talking about enforcement efforts, but enforcement is not going to get us out of this problem. And it is the work and collaborative efforts of people like Jesse Chavez at the Madera Rescue Mission. You have Maddie Mendez over at CAP-MC, Community Action Partnership, Madera County. There are so many people involved in the collaborative efforts that I want to kind of talk about it. We have a homeless coalition that meets monthly that discusses where we're going. Each month we talk about positive things that are occurring, what kind of homeless opportunities, if we have specific needs, where our line level persons say, hey, I have someone who's in need of services, well, we're connecting them. We have behavioral health assistants in there. They have 34 out of the 150 beds for their patients alone, or I call them patients, I apologize, it's their clients. They have 34 beds set aside there. They have Casa Grande, beds down at Casa Grande. They're about to open. We have Sugar Pine Apartments that are behavioral health beds. So it's finding the housing and finding the assistance for this is a collaborative effort with DSS and some of our law enforcement partners. I also want to talk about the Sheriff's Department and the Police Department. The Police Department has just released our community response team. It's a team of one right now with a second one already identified. But they're going and connecting to these services. So we're not just an enforcement arm, but before we do any enforcement, we want to make sure that if they are ready to get out of their current situation and scenario, we are ready to connect them to the services that are necessary. Apologize. So options moving forward. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the adoption of the updated ordinance, and that is where we are currently at with our current ordinance. We do have 4-14 that is applicable and usable and is being used. But one of the areas that we're looking at is we have provided that ordinance to Josh, who is out of our city attorney's office, who has done numerous work with other cities in ordinances and actually was able to brief on the Supreme Court on the most recent case out of the Grants Pass case. So he's very knowledgeable on this. We're looking to update our ordinance and make it more usable. One of the issues the Madera PD has, and you'll see just by driving by our parks, is we're having difficulty in the parks with homelessness and not so much setting up encampments. So the encampment ordinance doesn't actually fit what we're dealing with at the parks. We're dealing with everything that they're bringing from their encampments to the parks, and they're doing almost like a park takeover where you can have 5 to 10 individuals. They'll bring all their equipment that is associated with encampments, but they're not staying there 24 hours. So it's truly not an encampment issue. But now the general public doesn't feel that they could use those. So they're unusable for everybody. And so we're looking at things and ways that we can address what the needs of our community are. Not a generalized policy, but something that's associated and direct for what our needs are. The second piece is we're looking for some type of action related to vehicles at parks that are used as encampments and are parking there long term. We've seen dogs chained up, and it's just their place to park for the day, but you'll see them day in and day out. Now, again, they may not stay the full 24 hours or weeks at a time, but they'll show up right when the park opens and stay till the park closes. And it's just not a safe feeling for people, and it's not available for everybody to use that parking spot. You know, the goal of our ordinances is not to have desperate treatment towards any individual or any group. And what we're doing is trying to find some ways to have some practical and protectable ordinances that are useful and help all citizens within this town. These laws should apply to even if we have maybe a group from the college that comes up and one disagrees with something that comes out of here and wants to set up an encampment out front and kind of protest. It should apply to that. It should apply to the Boy Scouts if they want to take over a park and camp overnight. There's already things in place where you can get a permit for a single night. So as long as we do it right, it should be applicable to everybody. So I want to make sure that this is not a homeless ordinance. This is an encampment ordinance, and a free use of public spaces is what we're trying to get out of this ordinance. And then lastly, is kind of an action item, and it goes for everybody. We're looking for affordable housing. That is what's needed in this town. We don't have enough of it. We did just recently open a new, I believe it was 28 units last Thursday that I went over and met, and it's great for our community because we need that. But again, sometimes even that starting rate of those new apartments aren't truly considered affordable housing for the people that we are speaking about right now. And so that's the aspect we need to look at, is helping out Madera Housing Authority with expanding their ability, because that Section 8 and some of those that are closed off because there just isn't enough space is what's truly needed to get these people from emergency housing into permanent housing. With that, hopefully you obtained something and
a bit.
it didn't bore you to death, but I want to provide an opportunity for some questions. If there's some direction you wanted, if there's something you wanted to see as an ordinance, I don't have an ordinance I'm bringing to you. We're in the review stage of our current ordinance and making sure it's still completely viable with everything that happened, because with the executive order, oftentimes you'll see that there's usually money attached, and if you're not doing or following what the governor is asking, he may begin to withhold. So we want to make sure we're within those guidelines. Thank you.
We'll open public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for questions. And Councilwoman Evans.
Yes, we went to League of Cities I think it was in April, and they were speaking of homeless encampments. And they also were speaking of the fact that they were going to pass some type of a law to where the parking lots of, just say like Walmart or different individuals like that, or even people that had property that wanted to offer their property for the homeless, there was supposed to be some type of a permit or something that they would be able to get, the property owner would be able to get, to be able to allow homeless people to be able to park on their property. Is that something that has come down the pike yet? Or it was spoken to us and it was given to us at the time that we were at the League of Cities?
So I don't have anything specific to add to that. I don't have knowledge of that. I would just suggest something like a public area such as Walmart probably isn't the best idea.
Right.
Once you start to get that congregation, it really deteriorates what is your primary business district. And so you don't want to have that in that area. But I understand where you're coming from with properties, individual properties, and allowing that. But I don't have an answer to that.
Okay, no worries. I'll look back in my notes and see what I can come up with and get back with you on that. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Montes.
Councilmember Evans, I think we were talking about like safe camps and safe parking, which municipalities do have the option to do. I don't think that's something that we're doing now. I don't know if I would recommend that either, but I'd be in favor of looking at our current ordinance and looking at any deficiencies that we do have, or at least bringing something back. I do think that we need to treat everybody with dignity and respect, but we also have to be able to have a certain level of control on our public facilities. I'm on the board for CAPMC. I'm a volunteer for the Pit Count. That's the area that I work in Fresno. And so just seeing what's out there, it's pretty unsafe for people to be in camps. I would argue that it's less compassionate to try to keep people in that type of situation. But we're not trying to criminalize or penalize, but there are already laws on the books. We want to be compliant with the governor's executive order. So I'd be in favor of your staff doing some revisions and bringing them back to council, because that's some of the complaints that we get to. Some of our public facilities are not usable, and we're not saying that people don't have the right, and how people do have the right to be there. But just like everybody else, we have to be compliant with the rules, and as long as the rules apply to everybody, we should be able to enforce them. If there's a deficiency in our current ordinances, then we should remedy that so that we have nice public facilities. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's too much to ask, or too, over the top or anything. But that would be my position.
And I appreciate your comment. I agree. We are taking those with our city attorney, and we're going to start with what we currently have, and then begin to expand into where we want to go.
We look forward to that. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia, and thank you, Chief, for providing us the update. The report that was given to us at the League of Cities, back to Councilwoman Evans' point, was that the league or the folks that were already implementing certain policies within their cities was a designated area where people can park their vehicles and use that. Can't call it a mobile home park because you have that, but something in that arena where you have vehicles that come in, park and make that the somewhat of a permanent home for them while they're transitioning. I think that was the intent of these policies that are being implemented in these areas. And there was suggestion for us, to look at, because what are cities doing to try to combat the homelessness? And this was one of the ideas that came about. Councilwoman Evans, I'm not sure if that was exactly what you're referring to, but I attended the same session.
Yeah.
Second is, when we talk about imminent danger, would you say that imminent danger persists in our Fresno River? Is that considered imminent danger of what we see there due to fires? We've seen some homicides, or we've seen some fatalities there. So would that constitute an imminent danger for us to take action on some of these policies?
No. And I'll allow the city attorney if he wants to expand on that. But when you're looking at the intent of the law specific to what the Governor Newsom's talking about, he's talking about a lot of their encampments are dealing with what Caltrans deals with. And so if someone's putting up an encampment in the middle of the Highway 99, that's an immediate inherent danger that is obvious. The person's going to have to cross the freeway, which is a danger to the vehicles and the person, and then him just being there in the middle of the road. The fact that they're in a location where crime is high does not show that it's an immediate danger, especially when they're the ones that are the causation a lot of times of the crime. Not every homeless person's a criminal, so please don't take it in that way, but I'm saying there's a higher population down there where the criminality is higher than the normal areas.
Thank you. And, as the governor's executive order states, do your part. What would you consider your part, and how do we adapt our actions to get to that? Like, what is do our part?
So do our part is actually taking that enforcement action. So he's talking to many cities that are not, or they have a stance within their community that we don't want to take action. He's asking, no, we all need to do this together. If we're not doing it together, if what happens is we choose not to, and maybe the large city to the south of us takes an extreme stance, then what you're going to see is an influx coming our way. So it's got to be a group effort within our state that says, we're not going to accept this. We're going to have enforcement action, but at the same time, we're also going to scale resources. So we need to make sure every county is on the same page and is willing to provide resources, but also willing to provide the enforcement efforts. So it's not disparate between the states, and then we're having certain cities doing one thing and it's creating chaos.
And last question here, Chief, is by having to enforce and take action, how much of those resources will that take away from, your current service calls that we have? I mean, does that take a lot more resources from what you already do? I mean, obviously you're doing it in some of these encampments, like you mentioned, but having to take this action, how would that affect your department?
There's a positive and negative to that. The resources really are a big drain on the Safe and Clean team, but that's their assignment. So it's to Public Works, but it does actually take sometimes above and beyond what they actually have and takes away from roads and some other areas because these encampments are somewhat large. The other piece to that is code enforcement. That's a main part of their job. And so I appreciate the work they've been doing. I have my supervisor and they do a great job down in that river bottom. But I also say it's a needed because it does reduce crime. We don't have these places turning into mini cities where criminality is actually becoming worse. We have to keep them moving. We have to get them into housing because it's dangerous when they come together because there's a lot of drugs and other issues that are occurring down in those areas.
Thank you. I did have an opportunity to listen to a presentation provided by a gentleman at the rescue mission, and their intentions are always to be very helpful, with those that want to be helped. But there's also folks that utilize this as a revolving door. They know that the services are there. They understand that you're providing some type of resources, but they're not wanting to get the additional help. And some of that could be the mental health aspect of this thing. And in my opinion, I feel like the state has really allocated a lot of money into these programs and services. And as the years go by, they don't see the actual, well, where is the improvement? And I think in the perception of the public, it seems like we're starting to see this thing grow even more. So I know there's a lot of work being done on the departments like Rescue Mission, CAPMC, Police Department, and all these cities are all trying to do something to combat this, but there doesn't seem to be a benchmark that we're hitting. And I think, you know, I don't know what kind of action needs to be taken, but obviously I think it's getting to that point where he's urgently, now saying the word urgently, but yet with dignity. It's almost like a contradiction of what he's saying is hurry up, but take your time. And he's not being concrete on what exactly he wants. This, I mean, I think he spells it out in policy, but he's not being concrete on exactly how would you like local jurisdictions to combat this, and where is the funding coming from? Because one thing I can tell you is that the funding will come from within this general fund at some point.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head between legislation that came out or the court hearings that came out and the fact that there is no barriers there. The fact that we are seeing us go backwards where there's more homelessness and it's actually out in the public and out in people's in a visual sense. But the other issue is we spent a lot of money already through COVID and everything else. And our communities and this state voted for Proposition 1. That passed. So there's $3.3 billion that's going to come down towards housing and help towards the homeless problem. And so if we're not doing and actually really taking action, there's going to be a lot of frustration. That's a lot of money that if we're not seeing results and getting to where we want our communities to be, then we're failing. And so that's the big push, is making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I just want to make sure people are clear on, it seems like there's two distinct things. There's affordable housing and then there's homelessness. Affordable housing is what I see every day. People wanting to purchase a home, they can't because they can't seem to afford. And there's people that are unhoused. They don't even know where to start. And I don't know that that's even, there's a nexus there, yes, but it's got to do with, you know, there's mental health involved in there. And I think it just creates a complex situation that I don't think it's easy to solve with these executive orders. And at the end of the day, I think it's laid on us as a jurisdiction to try to fix that. And I think it's going to be very difficult, like you said, if not everybody is collaborating in this. So
that's the important aspect, is that we go back and support the collaboration between the city and county entities with the nonprofits to continue to push to fix this.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your presentation.
Councilwoman Mejia.
Thank you for the presentation, Chief. I was wondering if there's a demographic breakdown of the unsheltered population. I saw the general numbers, but is there a further breakdown for the demographics?
I don't have a further breakdown, no. There may be, but I just don't have it.
Okay. And then is there a city and county policy representation on that coalition that you mentioned?
Yes. So I represent the city side on the group. There is a lot of county, because a lot of the money flows through the county between public health, behavioral health. Those are services that are county driven. CAPMC's on that. And then there is some members of the Board of Supervisors that go with the CAO.
Okay. So are city reps, like elected officials from the city, invited to that?
Yeah, there's nothing preventing you. We have an actual meeting tomorrow at 12 to 1:30. Is our next meeting. It's our once a month meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Chief, just one question. You talked about looking at our ordinance and how the governor has asked everybody to step up. The state has to move together or this can't be changed. So are we working with our law enforcement partners to the left of us and to the right of us, Fresno and Chowchilla, to make sure that our ordinance kind of blend together so we're marching to the same beat?
Yes and no. We're reviewing them, but we don't always agree with every single aspect of them. And they don't always fit the community needs. And what's happening in Fresno may not be specific to Madera. So I think there is going to be some differences. But the fact is I know they're going and working towards enforcement. And when a lot of times with this enforcement, sometimes it looks like it's a heavy hand, but a lot of times it's people that are not willing to go on their own or have issues that are barring them from doing it. And now if you refuse, then we're going to use the enforcement arm. And then hopefully the court system will have a diversion that mandates that you now attend these things and go into these programs. And so it's not so much we're looking to jail our way out of this. It's working with the court system to try and mandate whether it's treatments, whether it's behavioral health. So making sure we're clear on that one. But the county is actually on board from the sheriff's department side. And sometimes that's our difficulty on that Tozier Bridge. Just east of that is our county line. And when we do major enforcements, we push them out there and we may be fined for a month. And then they go out and do their major enforcement because they get so many complaints and they come right back to our side. So there is that ping pong, and we don't want that to occur between the city of Fresno and us and some of these outside cities.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Councilwoman Evans?
Yes, I was going to say that we do have that because for me, living with the river being my backyard, I see it so often. Another thing is they're using the bridge area, and I'm sure you probably understand, where they've kind of dug out at the bridge over by the McDonald's right on not Cleveland, Yosemite. And they go up under there and then they drop the tarp down. Well, at night is when they really bring out the bonfires and they congregate and have their little whatever it is that they're doing. So once PD comes and moves them from there, all they do is just pick up their stuff and then they move to another encampment. So there's two different ones now that they're working out of on the river right now. So maybe you can send code enforcement out and take a look at it, but
Code enforcement's well aware of the frustration of even in 72 hours. Some of the difficulties is when you do post for those encampments, gives them time to pack their stuff up, go put it off in the distance, and basically you're cleaning up their trash and leftovers of soiled property. So really it turns out to be majority of it's just trash. They take their personals. So I know what you're talking about when they just kind of move back and forth with their same equipment.
Yeah. So. But anyway, thank you so very much for that. Thank you for the service that you guys do. I see you riding back and forth on the little dune buggies and things of that nature. But it's one thing I will say, though, is it's not so much the homeless that create the fires down there. A lot of times it's those that walk through with the cigarettes and they flick them. And that's where a lot of the fires start, because I've noticed that the homeless don't necessarily want to be seen because they don't want their homes moved. But those that walk through the breezeway back there or the walk pathway, they're the ones that create a lot of the fires because of the flickering. And then also with the fireworks that we have. So those are some of the things that I've noticed as well back there. So.
Thanks for your observations.
Yes, definitely. Give me a job now.
Councilmember Villegas.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Chief, thank you for the presentation. And I wanted to ask you, those 3.3 billion, this is for the whole state, right?
Correct. It's for the whole state, not for the city of Madera.
Yeah.
If we had 3.3 billion. Oof.
Well, we're not going to get that much anyway. It's more town anyway. So that was my
Yes, that's for the entire state. That's off Proposition 1.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Montes.
That'd be pretty cool if it was just for Madera, right?
I would love it.
The other, the meetings that you have, I know that there's a local meeting, but does that include the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care?
Yes.
So there are some policy discussions regarding at least the Fresno jurisdiction and Madera.
There definitely are, and it is by Zoom, so it's not something they have to actually be present at. So there are times where they are on Zoom often, just so they don't have to come up every month.
Okay, so I don't know if that is something that came up, actually the ordinance that came up in those meetings, or if anybody from law enforcement is actually they're talking about it in those meetings, so we can kind of get a perspective of what, because the providers and maybe law enforcement may not see eye to eye. I'm not saying that they're going to be at odds, but that be something, or at least a resource that we can pull some of the policy discussions they've been having over there and some of the concerns that they have maybe.
Thank you. The same thing you're discussing tonight is what's on the agenda for tomorrow, Governor Newsom's. It's our first meeting since that's come out, so we will be discussing that. But there's a pretty solid partnership where they understand the need for enforcement. They are not just one-sided. They actually do support it. So it's a very healthy group.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
I will add one other suggestion when you go to that meeting is that, what we do also for our water, we formulate these GSAs under the Groundwater Sustainable Management Act that requires all of these water districts to come together and find a balance to be able to reach the levels of cutting back on that deficit of water. So it's no different here. If the state really wanted to enforce that, then I think it would behoove them to try to get our agencies, hey, you do this and you have this time limit to get it done. Because if Madera is doing it, but Fresno's not taking action, or Chowchilla's not taking action, then as you said, it just becomes a revolving door. They can push them out to a certain city, but the city out there isn't going to be that enforcing it. So I think if you collaborate in that fashion, the state may have to do that, similar to what they did with the Groundwater Sustainable Act. So just a thought there.
Thank you.
Chief, I want to thank you for your comments. Seeing no further comments, I look forward to this information coming back to the council so we can have an educated discussion regarding what we're looking at. This is not an easy beast to conquer. It's been going on for years, and there's going to be a lot of work to be done. And our council is in much need of information regarding how we're going to move forward. And of course, Shannon and the legal team will provide us our information. So I look forward to that. Lastly, I just want to congratulate you if in fact we did arrest this individual, and he's the one that been causing some stress in our community, attacking women specifically. Congratulations on that, and hopefully this in fact did happen, and we will make sure that we prosecute to the full extent of the law.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud today of our detective unit. I can't say enough about the work they've done over this last week. So thank you very much. And thanks for your comments. I've taken them down, and we'll be discussing the ordinance soon.
Thank you, Chief. We will now close item C1 and move on to item C2, which is our budget workshop by Mr. Lima. I'm gonna try this.
Good evening, Mayor Council. Mike Lima, Director of Financial Services. Today I'm here to discuss, kind of give you a preview of, or discuss the budget and the fiscal year 24-25 budget with a focus on the expenditure side. I spoke about revenues, I don't know, it feels like maybe a month or so ago, but today we're going to talk about expenditures. So, oh, that's why. Let's do that. There we go. So staff is putting the finishing touches on the fiscal year 24-25 budget for council consideration. This presentation will look at the most recently completed fiscal year expenses, specifically how the general fund and other expenses did compared to the budget. And then we'll conclude with some highlights of the fiscal 24-25 budget for the debut of the highlights of that budget. So let's talk about the general fund and what it was like last fiscal year. Fiscal year 23-24 adopted general fund appropriations. The budget that you adopted actually about a year ago today was $42.9 million, broken down as follows: personnel costs $24.3 million, operational costs $12.9 million, interdepartmental charges $3 million, capital and debt $1 million, and transfers out $1.7 million. These are for items like insurance, debt paid by other funds, and also grant match. At the end of the year, we actually ended up with a slightly smaller general fund than we started with. The general fund amended budget ended the year at $42.8 million. It was primarily due to a budget amendment in November 2023 that you passed, which moved appropriations from the police's general fund budget to the police grant fund budget. So this kind of gives you an overview of what it looked like. In 22-23, we spent $36.9 million in the general fund. The amended budget, as I mentioned, came in at 42.8. For the year, we actually ended up fiscal year 23-24, we ended up spending $40.7 million. So we increased our expenditures by almost $4 million, but we were still $2 million under budget. And that's a real key factor. Where did the money go? Well, believe it or not, personnel costs did not increase. Our actuals were almost identical. Our actuals in the most recently completed year were almost identical to the previous year. We had a lot of salary savings, and that's what generated a lot of, as I mentioned in a mid-year report to you, we were seeing a lot of salary savings that continued throughout the year, and we ended up finishing the year on the personnel side almost entirely flat with no growth. We did see quite a large increase in operational costs. They went from 9.8 million to 13.3. Pretty much everything else was pretty much in the same as the previous fiscal year. It really was the increase in operational costs that drove the overall increase between the two fiscal years when it came to actual expenses. And this is by department, taking a look at the same data, but by department this time. Our largest budget is police, but our police expenditures actually decreased by $300,000 last year when compared to the previous fiscal year, and they were well under budget by almost $900,000. We did see substantial growth in expenditures in fire, which I'll explain in a minute. And all the other budgets we saw some growth, but again, not huge dollars, but on a percentage basis, it does look like a substantial growth that we did see in there. So what does this mean? The general fund finished the fiscal year 23-24 about $2.1 million under amended budget. The savings between budget and actuals were due almost entirely to unexpended personnel appropriations due to vacancies, otherwise known as salary savings. Fire's actual expenditures were increase was due to us making 5 quarters of payments to CAL FIRE in fiscal year 23-24, as opposed to 3 payments. We paid only 3 quarters in 22-23. What does that mean? That means that in 22-23, they didn't get us the bill for 4th quarter until August. And so we paid it out of this most recent fiscal year. And this year, they got it to us in late June, early July. And so we paid it. So that's what, so anyhow, we paid 5 quarters is basically what we did this year, which explains the large increase in fire expenditures. Everyone likes to look at utilities because that is one of our biggest expenses here at the city. And it did have a rather substantial increase. We went up about $500,000 as a city in utility expenses. The biggest one was in sewer. It doubled. We went from $500,000 to $1 million in this most recently completed fiscal year. But we saw a little bit of increase in a lot of different areas. Facilities saw a little bit, but mostly that fire one was the one, or sorry, not fire, sewer was the biggest one that we had on that one. All right, let's talk about next year's budget. History's boring. Let's look at the future. What's it look like? Right now, our total city budget, this is for the entire city, is $216.1 million. That's up $14.1 million or 7% from fiscal year 23-24's adopted budget of $202 million. It is the largest budget in the city's history. I said it last year. I'm saying it again this year. This year's is the largest in our city's history. The general fund budget, though, is actually decreasing very slightly. It's going from an adopted figure of $42.9 million to $42.6 million, a 0.7% decrease. So how is it that the overall budget is increasing when the general fund is getting smaller? We have very large capital programs in both our water and sewer funds, and it's the capital that's really driving the growth in the overall city budget. Let's talk about some assumptions for the upcoming fiscal year. How do we build that budget? The salaries reflect a roughly 4% increase. We had a 2% increase a few weeks ago, back in July. We have another one coming up in January. We also had a $1,500 stipend payment that equates to roughly a 4% increase. All those numbers are built into the budget. Utility and fuel costs, we are increasing 4% from fiscal year 23-24 actuals to account for inflation. So those numbers I showed you just a couple slides ago, they're going up 4%. That's what we built into the 24-25 budget. And interdepartmental charges are also increasing by approximately 4% due to labor and inflationary factors previously mentioned. Let's talk about the stuff that we've added into the budget. The first bullet here is not sexy. I'm going to admit it. It's not. We're not going to have ribbon cuttings. We're not going to have, press conferences about it. But it's one of those things that's, about good government. We are taking a capital. For a long time, we've had our fleet and our information technology funds cover both operations and capital. And so it's hard to tell how much you're spending on capital purchases out of there and how much you're spending on actual operations of the organization. We've split that. In this budget, we're going to actually split it. So you'll know exactly how much we're buying in capital out of those areas and how much we're buying or it's costing for us our operational side. So you'll see that in the budget. Police, there's a lot of different items of police equipment in this budget. We're proposing several poll cameras at $70,000 being paid for by supplemental law enforcement fund. 67 tasers at $50,000, again, supplemental law enforcement fund. E-bikes for patrolling the river. We just heard about the river and also our community. $12,000, again, supplemental law enforcement. 6 radios are proposed for purchase as the first in a overall replacement plan to replace all the radios that police have. $51,000 paid with Measure K. We have some police facility improvements. We're in the budget, we're proposing $100,000 out of Measure K for a kitchen remodel. There's also the police headquarters lobby improvements. That's also $100,000 out of Measure K. And finally, the south parking lot expansion of $150,000, again, Measure K. Parks is seeing some money put into their budget for facility improvements. We have the Lionstown and Country Park batting cages at $70,000. That's a general fund contribution. We have McNally Park musical equipment that is proposed in the budget, $42,079, again, general fund. And finally, Sunrise Sports Complex goalpost replacement for $10,000, again, general fund. All improvements at our parks. Equipment, there is money in this budget for equipment purchases. We are proposing the purchase of a tractor for the Safe and Clean team of $110,000. That's in the fleet acquisition fund. Also a tilt bed trailer for parks for $11,000. That is in there as well. And finally, probably very apropos given what has happened over the past year or so, we're purchasing a sewer camera out of the sewer and also the general fund. Both are contributing into that. That's $140,000. That is in the budget as well that we'll be bringing to you in a couple weeks. Finally, there's some new funding in there. These are new funding sources that we've never budgeted before, and we are going to be proposing to budget them. We've received monies, and they have some conditions put on those fundings, and so we've set up separate funds for those, and we are going to be coming to you to ask for those. First one is home project jurisdiction funding of $500,000. I'll actually be talking about that in the next item that comes up, so I won't go over that one too much right now, but we've got $500,000 in the budget for the 24-25 budget for that. We have been receiving over the past roughly year and a half money from various distributors of opioids as part of an opioid settlement that was reached between the state of California and these distributors. So we have been receiving mitigation money and have been depositing it. We're now up to about $70,000 in that fund. And so it could be used for a variety of purposes. We will be discussing what we plan to do with it, but just know there's $70,000 in the budget for opioid mitigation efforts that will be in this coming budget. And finally, SB 1186 proceeds, only $8,000. But what that is, when people go to pay their business license, they contribute a small portion, and that comes back to us and sets up a funding source where we could train our building inspectors on ADA requirements and also maybe even hire folks to come in and teach our staff on ADA issues. And so it provides a funding source, a dedicated funding source for ADA is really what it is from a city perspective. And so we have $8,000. We're going to actually budget it this year for the first time. This is probably the one that we're most proud of, I would say. So governments in general have been really good. They're really good about opening things. About starting things. So we'll open a park, we'll open a wastewater treatment plant, we'll open all kinds of things. We're not good at maintaining them governments are just not. And what typically happens is something breaks down. How it works in the budget process is how something breaks down and the poor director comes up and says, hey, I need money to replace an air conditioner. And it kind of gets thrown in the pot with all the other requests and you fight it out. And at the end of the day, when it comes down to an accountant versus an air conditioner, the accountant always wins. It always does. No, I'm kidding. They don't. But anyhow, but the air conditioner has to fight for resources with everything else. And that's really not a good way to address facility needs. So we are going to do something, I won't say innovative, it's been done by other cities, but it's innovative for here, for the Valley. I haven't seen it too much here. And that is set up a deferred maintenance fund where we're going to set aside money to tackle these issues as they come up, as these buildings come up. So we have a pot in place where if something breaks down, we've got the money ready to go and we don't have to go raid police or finance or someone else to pay for it. So we are proposing this year to fix 2 police air conditioning units. We are also proposing to fix 2 air conditioning units at Fire Station 57. Both of those items are $30,000 a piece. We're also looking to replace the doors at the Pam M Center. That's $80,000. And we're going to collect and set aside money for a re-roofing project at the Public Works Complex. That's going to be probably 4 to 5 years we're going to collect, but we're going to start off with $200,000. We're going to put that into the bank and leave it there. And when we get to the point where we need to replace it, we'll have that money in place. So how do we do it? How do we, balance these budgets and how do we, scrimp and save? I think this is a good example of kind of the research that we do and the ways that we look under every cushion to find every penny so that we can come back and say, this is what we have to budget. I want to talk about an example, the unfunded pension liability savings. So as a member of CalPERS, the city is required to make an annual contribution to offset CalPERS' unfunded pension liability. For those of you who don't know what that is, CalPERS has not enough assets to cover all the pension obligations that are out there. And so what they did a few years ago is they said, okay, every member is going to have to kick in extra money in order to shrink that deficit. And so we get a bill at the beginning of every fiscal year. It says, here's your contribution for this year. The city can make monthly payments. So every month it's basically, they tell you, here's your amount. You can make monthly payments. So here's 1/12 of your total, or you can make a lump sum payment at the beginning of the fiscal year. So for the one that just started, the one we got just about a month ago, if you added up all the monthly payments, our annual total would be just about $4.8 million. If we pay the lump sum, that comes out to $4.6 million. So by making the lump sum payment, the city saves $155,000 this year, saved $155,254. Over half that savings goes to the general fund. We plug that right back in and use it for something else. And that's the kind of thought process and work that we do in order to build this budget. And that's how come we can come back to you and deliver a balanced budget that also stays within our fiscal means, because we do things like this. That is the end of my presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have on this budget presentation.
Thank you. I'll open up public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to ask questions of Michael? Seeing none, we will close public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Montes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Mike. I have a question. It's just, it kind of, when I heard the number $80,000 for doors at Pan Am, how many doors and what are they made out of? That's a lot of, I mean, am I just not understanding how much doors cost? $80,000 at,
I understand, and I may defer to my colleague, the Parks Director, on this, but I understand that there's certain framing that is very different about those doors, and it makes them more expensive than you might expect, like a door like the one here at
Right.
Council Chambers, that there's some special framing that has to be required, and that's what has increased the
so
cost.
it's more of the wall than just the door? I mean, I've been a fan out.
I believe
several
off the
times.
top of my head, if memory serves me, there are 7 to 8 exterior doors. And some of the challenges that we've had is people have attempted to break into the building and they've damaged some of the hardware. So it's the aluminum frames around the doors. And then it's also the locks that go on them.
So it's not just the
It's
door.
not just the
yeah,
door.
Yeah,
It's
it's the whole
And
assembly.
there's 8 of them. They're exterior. They're golden.
Made out of gold.
And so one thing too that Mike didn't mention, and that's built in, because there's a whole lot more detail behind this part that you'll be receiving in a couple of weeks. In our deferred maintenance plan, we're actually proposing to allocate $10,000 this year specifically for door hardware. We own a lot of doors at the city, and the doors are constantly breaking or damaging. There's just a lot of people that come through the doors. And so those are little things that we're building into this year's budget that historically has not been built in. But the Pan Am Center, it's at a point where the doors should be replaced. And when we were looking at the organization, we were trying to identify things that were constantly addressing or consistently addressing. And these were some of the things that were pretty high on the radar because we spend a considerable amount of staff resources pretty regularly going out there. There's a laundry list of things that are not on this list. And some of the things that Mike was discussing are things that we have in the budget, not things that we've previously talked about that are grant funded. For example, James Talbot Park was not on this list. That's a $2 million project that we're in the middle of. The trail at Tony Country, $1.6 million. These are just some of the things on the deferred maintenance list. Thank you.
No, thank you. The last council meeting or a couple of council meetings ago, I had the same question about, we had some options on light fixtures and the options were like from like 10 or 15,000 to like 60,000 per. And I was like, wow, it must be a golden light, right? So, but I have to ask questions because those are the questions that I can anticipate based off of the, obviously we're going to get more details, but off of this presentation, it's like, oh, you're even going to ask about the $80,000 door. So thank you.
No problem.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. And thank you for your comments too, Councilmember Montes, because I too think that sometimes, doors for that price is quite a bit of money. I don't know, maybe it's government, but we had the same issue over at the golf course. And a lot of times you learn that it's more of an ADA fire because the type of building that it has. And I'm not sure if that's how much more you have to pay for these doors, but I know the accessibility, emergency exits and what have you. And that's something that I wanted to bring up. Maybe the staff and maybe council can consider later on that on that deferred maintenance plan that you may want to consider one of your other assets that produces some type of profitability, which is your golf course out there. You do have an asset out there that also has a lot of deferred maintenance, a lot of the ACs. I know we've had that conversation before, but hopefully within this plan, we either do something differently with the funds that are being allocated from that, or maybe add some of that to this deferred maintenance as well, that you add that on your plan. Again, this would be something that council would have to agree on. I just bring it up as a suggestion. I appreciate that because I think it's important for us to have a deferred maintenance a fund or expenditure fund. Question, Mike, thank you again for the presentation. Early on, you brought up the slide where you showed all the costs or personnel, operational, and what have you, and we saw an increase of $4 million to operations. So my question is there any overlapping between personnel and operation where you may see this increase on the operation side, given that there may be some salaries or wages paid on that end?
No, I wouldn't expect that. Where we would typically see that is within the personnel area. If there's vacancies, a lot of times overtime will increase or part-time expenditure for part-time employees will increase, but you don't usually see it in the operations side. in my looking through the operations side, it truly was operational expenses that were increased. And so I would say in this case, no.
Okay, good. And it's good to see that our personnel costs have come down, and that could be by not filling some of those vacancies or vacancy savings, because over the last couple of years with the 4-year plan that we had for a lot of our bargaining units, obviously that increased some cost and that capacity, your benefits and what have you. Now you have unfunded liability. So I just wanted to, you see that, and that's a good savings, but I just wanted to make sure that I understand that correctly with the operational. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that.
So Councilmember Rodriguez, I wanted to save some things for 2 weeks from now, but if you brought up the golf course, as you might know, there is a capital improvement fund there that both the operator and the city contribute into. That fund has about $75,000 in it. Council direction at a previous meeting earlier this year was to take, if there was any additional profit, to put that back in and to put it into the capital fund. The budget we will bring to you in a couple of weeks carries that out, and there will be a pool of a little over $100,000 available for capital improvements at the golf course in the upcoming year. So we did not put that in the deferred maintenance fund because there is a contractual liability there, or contractual relationship there between the operator and the city, whereas the deferred maintenance fund is strictly city assets, city funded assets. So we kept them separate, but rest assured, we've heard council, we've included in the budget.
Awesome. Thank you. And I also want to thank our Parks Director, Joe, for getting on top of that as well, because I think he's heard it not only from the tenants there, but we've actually seen it. And those doors, when we had the estimate come through, were quite expensive. And, let alone the other components that are failing as well. So thank you again.
Councilwoman Mejia.
Thank you. I too appreciate the question about the $80,000 doors. What will be the guidelines for the deferred maintenance fund? How are requests going to be prioritized?
So we are working closely with our facilities manager, who has identified items that need to be replaced over the next 5 years. And then we're starting to put money in there. He's identified some of the critical ones that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. Those are the ones that are being proposed for funding next year, including the 80,000 doors, which are now infamous. But rest assured, there is a schedule that has been put together of what is going to be spent over the next 5 years and the money that needs to be collected for it.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you very much for that report. We look forward to talking budget again in those $80,000 doors. Now, we move on to Mr. Lima again under item D, petitions, bids, resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. Item D1, home project jurisdiction funding acceptance.
Good evening again. Mike Lima, Director of Financial Services. Feels like I never left, but tonight we are going to talk about home project jurisdiction funding acceptance. On May 18, 2024, the city was notified it had been awarded just a hair over $372,000 of home project jurisdiction funding. So we were otherwise known as home PJ funding. Home PJ funds are awarded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's HUD. We have received home PJ funding in the past, but as a subrecipient of the state. This is the first time the city has been directly awarded home PJ funds. And that is because we now have the population size to earn a allocation from them. So home PJ funds can be used for a variety of housing initiatives, including assisting existing owner occupants with funding to repair, rehabilitate, or reconstruct their homes, funding a down payment assistance program for new and eligible home buyers, constructing or rehabilitating affordable rental housing, either with the city or as a standalone developer, or in a partnership with another public or private developer. And finally, either as setting up a rental or security deposit assistance program for tenants. The city has 2 years to devise a spending plan for the recently awarded home PJ allocation, and 2 years after that to fully expend it. In other words, funds have to be spent within 4 years of award. Should council decide to accept this funding, staff will return in the future with a spending plan for these monies. To finalize distribution of the award of home PJ funds, HUD requires official acceptance by the entity receiving the funds and budgeting of both the awards and a one-time match. In this case, the city's match equals almost $128,000. Staff has identified the general funds fund balance as the match's source. City Council can certainly turn down this funding and the city would still maintain its eligibility to receive it. However, there's no guarantee in the future when we would get an allocation. So you could say no tonight. We might get it awarded next year. It might be 5 years from now we get it. We're in the eligibility pool, but we just don't know when we would get it after this. Staff recommends approving resolution accepting the home PJ funds and authorizing the city manager to execute whatever documents are necessary to obtain that funding. And we recommend approval of a budget amendment resolution to budget the funds plus the required one-time match. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Most excellent. Are there any members of the public wishing to ask questions regarding this item? Maddie?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I would just like to ask for your support of this item to receive the funds and allow us as a committee, as a resident, to have input on the distribution of the funds. I'm going to share a story with you as to why, and I'll be under 3 minutes, I promise. A mother, 6 children at McNally Park, Thursday. If we would have known and we would have been able to work with probably the sheriff's office because they do the evictions, we would have known that she was being evicted. We could have maybe interceded with prevention diversion dollars. And she sent an email to CAPMC asking for mercy. And luckily we were able to work with DSS and she was placed at the motel. But with 6 children, you have to provide 2 rooms or the motel owner turns them away. So please accept the funding. Arnaldo, sign, please.
Are there any further comments? Then we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for questions and a motion. Councilwoman Mejia.
Thank you. Do we have an estimate of a turnaround time for staff to come back with that plan you mentioned?
Not at this time. We were very surprised that they even gave this money to us. The letter came out of the blue. So we haven't sat down and actually come up with a plan or a recommendation that we'll be bringing back to council. But I know it's a priority for us and we'll be bringing back as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, I move to approve D1 as presented.
Second.
Councilman
Hold
Rodriguez.
on
Okay.
just a second.
Shirley.
Yeah, I just had
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. I did have one question. Now, these home funds, I know the acronym HOME, are they separate from the home funds that the U.S. Department of Housing provides? Because I've seen these home funds being allocated to a lot of cities in Madera. The city of Madera hasn't participated. Self-Help Enterprises is the third party that administers this for a lot of these different types of communities. Mm-hmm. And when I see the source of funding, I see the county of Madera, but I don't see anything for the city of Madera. Do we have anyone that administers that, or are we going to have someone in staff to be able to provide these types of resources and or programs available for housing, rehabilitation, down payment assistance, and what have you?
So as I mentioned, we have received home funding in the past. Our grants unit is the one that is administering it on the behalf of the city. We just have never received this particular type of funding in the past directly. But we have had it, and we have, my understanding is some of the money was used for an apartment complex not far from here. So yes, we do use it, but we have city staff that works on that.
So city staff then administers, and they don't have someone like Self-Help Enterprise that'll administer, right?
At this time, we do not.
Got it. Thank you. Just want to confirm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
I so move to approve D1 as presented.
Second it.
Motion to approve Item D1 by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilwoman Evans. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Let's take that money.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also. We also have item D2, Second Amendment to the lease agreement for facilities at the Millview Community Center with Community Action Partnership of Madera County. Mr. Hebert.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, are we not?
We're not.
No, we're not.
1 second.
Okay. Okay, once again, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and yes, Joe Hebert presenting for Parks and Rec. I'm the director there. And this is item D2, which is the Second Amendment to the lease agreement for facilities at the Millview Community Center with Community Action Partnership of Madera County, Inc. Just a summary, the city has maintained a written lease agreement with the Community Action Partnership for over 28 years for the use of the building at Millview Community Center. CAPMC uses the Millview Community Center to house a Head Start program, which provides preschool for Madera's young children. The lease is set to expire August 15th. On May 15th, 2024, staff was here, requested approval of the First Amendment to the lease agreement, extending the lease to August 15th. This came after CAPMC requested the lease be renewed on April 30th, 2024, as the current lease agreement was set to expire in May. Due to the short turnaround and to ensure a thorough review of the agreement for revisions and updates, city staff is requesting a 90-day agreement extension to finalize the negotiations without interruption to the lease agreement. Although progress was made to the revision of the lease agreement, we have a new template that we're using. Staff is still requesting an additional 90-day period to finalize the key aspects of this agreement. Most importantly, the base fee rent. CAP first entered into a lease agreement with the city in 1995 for the use of the Millview Community Center facilities. The most recent agreement was executed in May of 2021 and was set for 3 years through May 2024. The base rent is currently set at $500 a month. Amendment 2 extended us to August 15th, which is next week, and Amendment 1 is extended to next week. The Amendment 2 would extend the lease through 90 days through November 13, 2024. We're pretty confident that we can do better than that. We just want to give us a little more runway. Our recommendation is to adopt a resolution approving the Second Amendment to the lease for the facilities at the community center with the Community Action Partnership. And that's the end of my presentation. I'm here to accept any questions.
Thank you. We'll open public comment on this. Is anyone wishing to speak regarding the item D2? Seeing none, we'll close this and bring it back to council for questions and a motion.
Move to approve item D2.
Second. Okay.
Motion to approve item D2 by Councilmember Montes, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
That's great.
That was great. Excellent.
Ease instead of the east again.
So we now move on to item D3, update on 2024 emergency repair of Avenue 13 sewer trunk main failures and renew a finding of emergency relating to emergency response and repairs necessitating emergency contracts without competitive bidding. Ellen, do you have this item?
Yes, I do, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I will now share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Start it. There we go. So we're bringing this report to you as required. We are supposed to present at all the regular council meetings as long as there is the potential for emergency contracting needed. And although most of the sewer main failures have been fixed, we're still investigating the roadway condition that could be a result of those emergency failures or emergent condition of the pipe. So that's why this item is still on your agendas. So following the last update that was on July 17th, Floyd Johnston Construction has completed the replacement of the 42-inch pipe that was at the first collapse at the Mission Bell site. And they have finished the roadway construction adjacent to the Nutrien site. There was some work that needed to be done after the CIPP lining took place. And then they have also backfilled the trench, or basically it was the entire roadway, and then reconstructed the road surface at the Mission Bell site. Essentially, Floyd Johnston Construction, they have moved off the site. They did do site cleanup and regrading along all the properties, and they, at the moment, do not have a presence out at the project anymore. I would like to acknowledge that the county has assisted, and they took care of some excess stockpiled material. There was some dirt and other asphalt and that had been left on the side that they took care of for us. Other folks out in the project site would be our geotech firm, which is RMA Geoscience. They have investigated the roadway over the sewer main with their ground penetrating radar, and they're looking for any potential voids below the surface. And I have some more information on that a little later in the presentation. So just some photos of the progress. This is fixing up the area that was around the manhole next to the Nutrien office. It is downstream of where the collapse, where the tanker fell in the hole. So this is buttoning that up. This photo was actually taken today as they finished all the striping up by Nutrien, and the striping also has been partially completed down by the Mission Bell site, but the current setup for the lining project is in the way. So again, the county will be assisting us in providing the yellow centerline stripe when that work is done. This is the new roadway right next to the Mission Bell site. We have also provided a seal coat to their entryway up to their gate, just because a lot of the equipment and material stockpiled there did damage their surface. So we tried to restore that as best as we could. So this is a picture of the ground penetrating radar unit. It's this device here on the left. You push it somewhat like a lawnmower down the road. And so our consultant pushed it along the entire alignment of the sewer main between Road 24 and Road 25. If they detected anything, then they would spend extra time going back and forth trying to find the limits of it. And I had to do a little research myself in case any questions came up, but in general, the way the GPR units works is it sends a high frequency radio wave, the pulses down, and it detects differences in the return signal. So that's how they determine maybe there's a pipe there or a lateral, or in this case, we would be looking for differences that would be associated with a void or a change in the soil below the road. So they have, if they found odd readings, like here, this is PV is potential void 22. It's not necessarily of significance or alarming, but it's just something that they note. And then they are scheduled to come back and do some potholing in some of these areas just to confirm and define what they were seeing. I will report that they did investigate all along the Nutrien frontage, and that is cleared. So so that was good. So we got past that first area, and there's no concerns with using that roadway there. So as it stands today, the costs of the emergency work are still around $2.6 million for the emergency repair of the pipeline and the road restoration. Bills and invoices are starting to come in from the bypass pumping and the traffic control company. So again, once we've received all those invoices, we'll be able to give you the final number. And also, we don't know what our repair costs will be for the roadway at this time. I did want to note that we are not going to do any of the potholing for these void areas until the CIPP lining is in place. So that way we don't run the risk of, damaging or unsettling any of the existing pipes. So they're kind of following right behind our CIPP lining contractor. And then we have talked to Floyd Johnston, and if anything is found, they're kind of on deck once we get a recommendation from the geotechnical engineer to make any repairs that might be needed. So as you can see, even though our CIPP project is not necessarily an emergency, it is somewhat tied to our emergency repair in that we can't complete our repairs until we're confident that the sewer main below the road can support it. So that's why we're also enjoying reporting on the progress of our lining project as well. So they have completed, they cleaned and cameraed for our second shot. So there's 3 shots in total in this first phase that will take us up to Road 24. So that the second shot was repaired, and they started the installation of that on Monday night. And it's a little different process than the first installation where they brought in the refrigerated truck. And so I have some photos to illustrate that. And then it is currently in the curing process. So that might take another day or 2 before it actually meets the temperature of the water inside enough to cure it. And it has to hold at a certain temperature for 5 hours. And then they have to cool it down before they can actually let the water out and then do what they need to do to finish the pipe, cutting out the manholes that are in between the segments, et cetera. And then they've also been working on the cleaning and removal of the debris that's in shot 3 that will take us up to Road 24. So as I noted, on the left is a picture of the first installation where the material came already prepped with the resin inside of it. That's why it's blue in this refrigerated truck. On this second shot, because it's so long, so this first shot was about 800 feet long. The second shot was 2,000 feet, much longer. So this material came in on a flatbed trailer, and you can see it's covered in a felt, actually. And once they uncovered that, it's kind of in an accordion fold. The liner is all on this one trailer, and it's white, so that means it hasn't received any resin yet. And you might notice in this picture, this pile here is a little flatter than this one. Well, this liner, it's still thick, but it's not as thick as the designs calculated further down, so that's why that's a little thicker. That's basically how you can tell the difference. And again, the thickness is basically just the felt liner, the felt pieces that are in the liner. So this material is then fed into, you can see this gentleman here, he's starting to feed the liner into a covered tent, conveyor belt tent. And so it's inside here, and he's kind of standing on it before it goes into the tent. So here is the tent with the conveyor belt. The liner here is blue. That means that the resin has been inserted, and it turns blue once it's inserted. And each application, about 20,000 pounds of resin is inserted, and then it's kind of squeegeed through until it's all coated. And a couple of our fine city officials had a behind the scenes tour, so they were helping inspect the process. And it is delivered up the conveyor belt. It's still only pulled by gravity from the water that's being inserted. So it goes up the conveyor belt at whatever rate that the pipe is being inserted into the sewer line. So it goes up the conveyor belt through this roller, and then here's the outside where now it's coming out of the tent and going into the manhole. So the Shot 2 liner started about 8 a.m. Monday, and it actually didn't reach the end of the line until about 7:30 last night. So almost 24 hours to insert that liner full of water to the end. And it's the same process as far as then circulating it through the boilers. The boilers are in these trucks, but I think for this application, because there's 2,000 feet, they've probably got like 3 trucks out there with the boilers heating the water. And then these are the gauges that are at every manhole and at the beginning and at the end where they check the temperatures. So until our next update, we expect to finish curing shot 2. We will be completing the camera work to check to make sure everything went in okay and that the liner didn't have any issues that would need to go in and be fixed. They're also getting ready to set up the next shot, which might start as soon as this weekend, but otherwise their schedule shows Monday. So with shot 2 being cured, we can move in, like I mentioned before, with the potholing to start those investigations. And actually, by the end of next week, shot 3 should be cured so that we can finish the potholing. And then the following week, start any road repairs. So tonight, our action is to accept the report given and also to adopt a resolution renewing a finding of emergency relating to our emergency response and repairs to the sanitary sewer main pursuant to Public Contract Code Section 22050. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ellen. Are there any members of the public wishing to ask questions on this item? Item D3. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to my colleagues for comments and or action.
Motion to approve D3 as presented.
Motion to approve item D3 by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Ellen, for that detailed. Yes, sir.
For the record, that was unanimous approval. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, because we needed 5 affirmative votes for that one.
Oh, for that specific one?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. All righty. We will now move on to item D4, designation of a voting delegate and alternates for the League of Cities, California Cities 2024 Annual Conference. Alicia.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Alicia Gonzalez, City Clerk. And this evening, I bring before you one item. It's the designation of a voting delegate and alternates for the League of California Cities Annual Conference. So the League of California Cities Annual Conference will be held October 16th through the 18th of this year at the Long Beach Convention Center. It will provide general sessions, workshops, networking events, and the business meeting, which will be held on Friday, October 18th, where each city is allowed one delegate to vote on resolutions affecting Cal Cities policies. At this time, all council members are registered to attend. Consistent with Cal City bylaws, the council must designate one voting delegate and up to 2 alternates to participate in voting if the delegate is unable to serve. Completion of the voting delegate form with one of the completion of the voting delegate form with one of the following: a minute order reflecting action taken by council, and the city clerk or mayor may sign a form affirming the names of the voting members. Tonight's recommendation is for council to approve a minute order designating a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates for the 2024 League of California Cities Annual Business Meeting. No direct financial impact is associated with this action. As an alternative, council may elect not to designate a voting delegate. However, this action will forfeit the city's voting ability on Cal Cities policies. I'll now turn it over to council to select a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates.
Before we do that, can we ask for public comment regarding this item? If there's any public comment under item D5, if not, then we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Any volunteers for this item?
I can volunteer if you.
No one wants to do
You
it.
would like to do it?
you want-
Councilmember?
I was going to nominate you.
Okay, no problem. Nominate me. That means that I have to attend the League of Cities conference now, right?
Yeah, yeah, kind of. Is there an alternate? Anybody wants to volunteer as an alternate?
I do.
Mr. Villegas.
And then if there's a second alternate, right?
Mhm.
I'll nominate Councilwoman Mejia. That's okay.
I second that.
Okay, Councilwoman Mejia. Any further? So let's make a motion and move to approve these council members Rodriguez, Villegas, and Mejia.
Motion
as
to approve.
delegates.
Second.
Motion to approve this item by Councilwoman Evans, second by Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Unanimous. Thank you very much, Alicia, for that one.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Now we move on to your second item, which is item D5, Amendment to City Council Protocols Guidebook, updating the method for placing items on the agenda.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. This item is D5, Amendment to the City Council Protocols Guidebook, and it's updating the method for placing items on the agenda. During its regular meeting on July 19th, Council adopted a Protocols Guidebook. July 19, 2023, Council adopted a Protocols Guidebook. The guidebook establishes procedures for the conduct of meetings, including proper procedures for the placement of future council items by council members, and the current process for agendizing items established in 2019, but it was formalized with adoption of the guidebook in 2023. On July 17th of this year, the council directed staff to amend the guidebook. Council sought to refine the guidelines to update the method of placing items on the agenda by including a new section to the agenda prior to council member reports to provide a specific time for future agenda items to be added, and to set a time limit and voting buttons, the electronic system, with the results announced by the chair. Tonight's recommendation is for council to provide staff direction regarding the duration of any time limits when proposing an item to be placed on the agenda, and as appropriate, adopt a resolution amending the City Council Protocols Guidebook. I will now turn it over to council.
Thank you, Alicia. Are there any public comments regarding this item, regarding item D5? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for questions and our answers. Councilwoman Evans.
Yes, I watched the meeting that particular night, and there was only 4 members here. But what I want to know is, does this mean that this will come after the administrative report, and then things that we would like to have placed on the agenda to be voted on at that point in time? Is there a specific agenda that we have to go according to be able to recommend?
Councilmember Evans, if I may, what this does, at least as what we were directed to present to you, was allow for a specific time reserved just to place items on the agenda. And that would come before any announcements, that'd come before any reports or anything else. So it'd be basically, if anybody wants to put something on the agenda, there's a specific time they can do that, and that would be when it is done. After that's done, then you can go on with any announcements or reports as to other items.
So normally we do it during our administrative reports. So this would eliminate us presenting it at that point in time during the administrative reports?
As worded, it would separate it out. So rather than having it lumped together, it'd be now 2 separate steps.
It's a new section on the agenda.
It's in the report.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank
Were
you.
you done?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Garcia. So in a sense, all it does is we have council member reports, and just the term itself, council member reports, is us reporting out for any of the agencies or other planning agencies that we serve on, and also providing reports of what we do throughout the city. In that, I don't think it specifically states adding an agenda item, and it may, but here we want to separate that so that we're clear that we're not having to cross, reports with agenda items that we may catch ourselves and adding discussions that are not placed on the agenda. I think that was the purpose of it. So it falls within the staff report. I think they provided the order of how it would go. This would go in front of the council member communication reports from what I see. So it just separates them both and we should be fine. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. I think I maybe misunderstood, but I thank you. I reached out to Shannon and he kind of explained that to me. And then obviously in the staff report there spells it out for us. I'm good with that.
Councilmember Montes.
Yeah, so I think Councilmember Rodriguez explained it pretty well. So we do generally council member reports, not administrative reports, and it just make it a little more efficient, in my opinion, and it would alleviate the possibility of getting into that discussion territory, which we're not supposed to do. So I don't know, I mean, a specific amount of time just to say, hey, this is what it is, and that would include the voting, is my understanding, right? So it's hey, this is what I would recommend. And then the clock starts ticking and then you have a chance to hit the button. And then once that time expires, then we would report out what.
Thank you, council member. So I think you're asking, well, how long can we talk about agenda items, right? What is that length? And as you know, the Brown Act says you can't have these long discussions or take any sort of action. Yet at the same time, you need enough information as council members in order to make the decision as to what you're putting on the agenda. So I'm going to give you what I call the general rule of thumb. And there's no law on this, but just a general rule of thumb. Usually it takes anywhere 30 seconds, maybe to 60 seconds. Say, hey, I'm interested in this item. Here's why I'm interested in this item. Is there support? People hit the buttons and it pops up. If you start getting into a couple minutes, then you're really starting to get into the discussion realm. So it's kind of a spectrum. So the council does not have to put a particular time limit on, but it has the option of putting a particular time limit on. That being said, the council will have to regulate itself. Mr. Rodriguez or I will not be popping up and saying, hey, you've reached your 2-minute mark. I may be saying you're getting into the Brown Act territory, but I won't be sitting here with a stopwatch for you. So if the council wants to set a time, they can. If they want to set guidelines, 60 seconds, we can do that as well. Or not even address the time, you can do that as well.
Sorry, but so then with that information, I'll recommend the 30 seconds. We can always, as a council, as a majority, can always come back and revise that section. I feel like that would give you plenty of time to explain, and it would limit the amount of time for discussions to happen.
So for purposes of clarity, you're saying the person who's presenting the item would have 30 seconds to make the presentation and say, here's what I'd like put on the agenda, here's why, and then is there support for it? And then that would be the 30 seconds, then the voting would occur. Is that correct?
If I can amend for you to carry a blowhorn, just to make
I'm not, to be clear, I am not making a recommendation
Again, for me, it's okay, the efficiency in which we can do it and avoid any potential problems. That would be my recommendation, to give so you have 30 seconds and you can give your, hey, this is what I want. And then after those 30 seconds expire, whatever has been voted on, it's over.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
I appreciate the 30 seconds, Councilmember Montes, but there are times where I can articulate beyond the 30 seconds. And I'm sorry, to add something on the agenda that's of importance, I think it's important for the council to know. I'm not engaging in a discussion, but rather, here's why I think it would be important for us to bring it. And after I articulate that, that would help the council determine whether or not they want to bring it. But I think 30 seconds would give me very little time. I think if we can extend that out to maybe a minute, if not, no more than 3 minutes. I don't know. I can go about a minute with that, but I just think 30 seconds may be, I hate for somebody to be looking at me, hey, you're going beyond that, but I didn't really articulate what I want on the agenda of importance,
So to your point, Shannon, you are concerned with the time limits, but specifically toward going into a discussion, and then that's when you get into trouble with the Brown Act. So if a minute
Discussion.
suffices and you don't go back and forth about, well, I don't think it's a good idea, but so if we can do a minute, I think that would be enough to say, I want to grow trees on Main Street. And the reason why is because, we need trees and that's it. As opposed to going on to down, well, what kind of trees and no, do we really need to go there, et cetera. So I think a minute, I would accept a minute and no more nor less.
That is within the legal range.
Correct.
You're okay.
Okay. Can't remember if it was Councilmember Mejia or Councilmember Evans.
It's okay. I was just going to say as well, I would think a minute because a lot of times when we start talking, 30 seconds goes so quick, so I'm in favor of a minute as well.
Councilmember Mejia.
And just for clarity, the minute, it's your proposal, but the decision making 30 seconds?
No.
So I would say that, in my opinion, would be include, okay, this minute for you to make the proposal and the vote to happen.
Okay.
Your motion.
So you.
And then just also, I just want to add that.
This is a prime example. If I put my thumbs up, then we should already have that thing squared away. So, I don't mean to interrupt your deal there, but I think you bring a good point is that if I articulated my reason why to bring it, then I'm just looking for, hey, we got thumbs up or do we got something to show?
Yeah.
And that shouldn't take any longer than, 10, 15 seconds. I think you'll be able to blow the horn, say your time's up, and then you're able to count. Nothing like that.
I will leave that to the discretion of the mayor and the city council to do that.
So the motion is, did you make a motion for 1 minute?
I understand maybe that Councilwoman, he has still had some comments. I wanted to finish that.
Yeah, just a comment that we did have quorum that day when this was presented.
Motion to approve.
So just to be clear, Councilwoman Evans, I think if I can make the motion, it'll be to be no more than a minute within that time frame to also have your vote, the vote.
I second.
You're good?
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
Shannon, for more, I don't know if I missed it, but does this also include the motion? Is it also included in the motion, the voting by buttons?
Yes.
Yeah. That's also included. Okay.
So just to be clear, you're adopting the resolution as presented, except you're setting a time limit of 1 minute for the items, which would include voting.
Yes.
Alrighty, thank you. That's the motion. It hasn't been voted on yet.
Great.
Motion by Councilmember Rodriguez, second by Councilmember Mejia. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes, excuse me?
Nothing. It's okay. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
The ayes have it.
You had a motion and a second.
Second on the floor already. Jinx.
Minutes over.
Okay, that's over 1 minute. Just sound the horn.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We've made that very clear. There are no administrative reports. And we will now go on to council member reports, announcements. And that's it. This portion of the meeting is reserved for the mayor and the council members to make brief reports on boards, committees, and other public agencies and at public events. To request updates and not initiate here, we're going to strike that in the future. To take action on matters initiated under this section of the agenda. Under this section, the council may take action only on items specifically agendized in which meet other requirements for action. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. I just have one thing. On Parent Square, it's a all-wide school. Every child in Madera Unified gets notice of any announcements. And today, Chief Sharmani with our Superintendent Lyle came on and let all the parents know a message about school starting Monday and drive safe. Slow down and remember we have kids dashing left to right, and I know parents are in a hurry, but let's make sure our kids make it to school safe on Monday. So thank you, Chief, for doing that video for our students in Madera Unified. That's all, Mayor.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you. At this time, I'd like to add something to the agenda. No, we'll leave that for another day. I just want to say thank you. And, I ended up taking a camping trip over to Campfire in Campadahi up by Oakhurst. And I wanted to announce to any people here that may have kids that may be interested in Campfire. It's a great experience for kids. I had an opportunity to go there as a counselor. And it was a great experience to see how many kids are out there, the growth that they go through, the camaraderie, the fun that they have. I don't know if a lot of people know about Campfire, but it's also a good organization. It's a co-ed organization. I certainly thought it was mainly for girls, right? So that's again me not understanding Campfire, but Campfire has grown to become a pretty big service for a lot of the kids. So if you have any kids that are interested in experiencing this, they do this throughout the summer and July. You can always get a hold of me or some of the people that run some local chapters here to get your kids involved in Campfire. Again, this is just showing kids, exposing them to the forest and exposing them to the life out in the forest, but at the same time, just not necessarily survival skills, but appreciating the national forest that we have here about an hour and a half away from us, or even closer to that. But anyhow, get a hold of me or get a hold of someone here locally. If you type up Campfire here in Madera, you'll certainly find a number where you can contact someone. With that, Mr. Mayor, those are all my comments I have, and congratulations to the Madera Little League. I know that they went through quite a bit, and all those that were present there. Thank you for representing Madera.
Absolutely. Councilmember Montes.
I also wanted to say thank you to Chief from good news that we received today of apprehending the individual suspected in the accosting of the person on the trail. And you're getting pretty famous. We're gonna have to ask for your autograph after the meeting. But hopefully everybody had a good summer. Looks like it's gonna start cooling down a little bit. So I'm glad. And those are my comments.
Councilwoman Evans.
Yes, thank you very much, Chief. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Chief, thank you so very much for everything that you do and all of you. I would like to just ask that students are safe. Also, there was, I received a call in reference to the crosswalks and the school at James Monroe, where one of the teachers was out in the crosswalk as he had his little sign up, and an individual blew the stop sign, and the teacher ended up falling onto the ground. So I don't know if there's any way that maybe and I know you guys are busy already, but maybe if there was someone that can just kind of watch over there, maybe sit and see as the cars come through and just kind of monitor it, because the congestion at James Monroe is large, just like some of the other schools, but just letting you guys know that this is something that has happened, and, the children were upset behind it. So, and also I just want to say thank you for the prayers that I received. I am back, and I will be sitting in this chair until something else happens. So God bless each and every one of you going home tonight, and thanks for the prayers again.
Councilmember Mejia.
Thank you, Mayor. I was happy to be a part of Parks' event, Street Smart Kids, last Monday. I was able to distribute backpacks that were sponsored by CVLEOC, T-Mobile, and StubHub, and HealthNet Inc. So thank you very much to the Parks Department for hosting that event where children were able to get free bicycles, helmets, and all kinds of goodies. Then I was also honored to be a part of Esmeralda Soria, Assemblywoman Esmeralda Soria's event on Saturday, where there were hundreds of backpacks distributed. We had a great time at the youth center again. So very good week for our kids in Madera. And last Tuesday, these chambers were full of young people that were participating in Siren's educational program about politics. And I think they did an excellent job with those presentations. And thank you, Councilmember Montes, for being here with me to face all the mock public comments that we got and also answer the questions that a lot of the young children had. And that's my report.
Councilmember Villegas.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you to the Chief for the great presentation. Also, I was in the van on Saturday and they give away the backpacks early in the morning. So that was a good event. A lot of children attend and they're all happy. So go back to school. So that was a great event. I like to see the children happy. So that was my report.
Thank you. Yeah, we were at Pan Am Park for that backpack giveaway. Tons of kids, tons of food, tons of music, really good time. I actually banged open one of those $80,000 doors that was out at Pan Am Park, so we probably have to repair that one. And that concludes our reports. Shannon, would you please take us to closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have two items for closed session this evening. The first is item G1, conference with labor negotiations pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6. The agency designated representatives are Arnoldo Rodriguez and Wendy Silva. The employee organizations are Mid-Management Employment Group and Law Enforcement Mid-Management Employment Group. The second item is item G2, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, position city attorney. Thank you.
Oh, we won't sound the horn if you go slower, brother. I mean, we're good with that, man. You know.
Have you ever worked at the, when they, what's that, the cattle thing? When they
Shannon, will you bring us back from closed session, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no reportable action taken in closed session.
Thank you very much. Our next city council meeting is August 21st, and September the 4th of this year. We now adjourn this meeting of the Madera City Council at 8:32. Thank you, everyone, for participating in tonight's event.